Well, there's three reasons to slow down. One is to have a lighter footprint on the planet. Second is because happiness is intrinsic. It's not extrinsic. It's inside of us. And by slowing down, we're able to find out what gives us the most joy and pursue the things that give us that happiness. And third is just for your health. 2/3 of Americans say that they're overstressed by too much work and by too much doing. So you'll feel more relaxed and better if you slow down. There's three practical tools to slowing down in a city. One is living 3 stories up. I found living in New York City that I was always barraged by so much at the street level, all the sample sales and happy hour come-ons and everything. But then when I started looking up at the trees, the glint of the light on the bottom of the trees, the sounds, even in people's windows, you see interesting things up in the apartments. All this just gave me a sense of peace that was available whenever. The second is urban sanctuaries. You can be in a big city wherever you live and you can find those spaces of peace and quiet. I particularly loved the edge of Pier 45 in Greenwich Village, where you didn't hear the sound of the highway anymore. All these places are urban sanctuaries that are available to you whenever you want. Another is silent meals. Even at the fancy restaurants in Manhattan, we were able to just have these quiet meals where we would just enjoy chewing the food 30 times, look into each other's eyes romantically, listen to whatever the soundscape is around you, just slowly enjoying every bite. Well, I'm not rich, and we found a way of making it work in Manhattan. Why don't you try something called paying yourself first? That's what I did for many years. So anytime you get any money coming into your life through a paycheck or a gift, take 10% of it and put it in a savings account for yourself. Over the years, this adds up to a lot of money. Living in a smaller apartment allows you to have less stuff and to spend less money. And I also think of Vicki Robbins' idea of your joy to stuff ratio. How much joy are you getting for each particular purchase? And is there a way to, simplify and find a joy to stuff ratio that works better for you? Well, a lot of it is just practicing efficiency and being smart about how you organize your time. Well, there's this New Yorker cartoon I love, where there's this Wall Street executive sitting at his desk. He's got his hands behind his head and his feet up on the desk. And the caption says, "I may not look busy, but I've got 19 people on hold right now." There's the 80-20 principle, which says that 80% of your results are accomplished in just 20% of your effort. And on the other hand, you actually get only 20% of the results from 80% of your effort. So if you 80-20 your life and you look at really what is the most effective activities, you can work a lot less. So it's about moving to the true 24/7, which is 24 hours a week, 7 months a year, and not 24/7 work. And one way to do that is through technology fasting. This is when we would turn off our gadgets for a weekend or 4 or 5 days at a time. The vacation auto-response is probably the best invention of the internet age. I'm out of contact. I'll get back to you on Wednesday. I found that to be extremely effective, and I started working 5-day weekends and 2-day work weeks. I reversed the weekends, and I was able to make ends meet. Part of it is having spaces for freedom and creativity and time to be with your friends and your loved ones without constantly checking gadgets. Going slow actually leaves you more time for relationships because you're able to really be with the person and give them the quality of your attention. Even just to notice people on the streets. Nietzsche is attributed with the physics of happiness, where he said there's 4 things: time in the open air, love for another being, freedom from ambition, creation. Time in the open air just means take your urban sanctuaries, go outside in the city. Love for another being. It doesn't have to be 5,000 friends on Facebook. It means having a being that you love and that loves you. Freedom from ambition. Drop your ego. Allow yourself to be and to just enjoy creation. Finding what it is that, and this is you find when you're going slower, what it is that really motivates you. What's your bliss, as Joseph Campbell asked, and you create from there. Right, you're talking about the British essayist Carlyle, who said that every idle moment is treason. Well, in our culture of overwork and becoming homo economicus, it is almost treasonous to do what I did in New Slow City, which is sort of working a 2-day work week. It seems very seditious to idle on a park bench and read haikus, as I was sometimes doing in the middle of a workday in Manhattan. I've spent time in 75, 80 countries around the world, and they're not actually tied to the clock as much as we are, and there's much more time for extended family and for relationships and just idling in a hammock. All these things have been lost in our culture. So just bringing a little bit of that back into your life is extremely helpful. Well, we're conditioned to think that being busy is the most important thing. But is it? What are you doing right now? Are you in the office? Are you at your computer at 2 o'clock in the morning? And it actually reminds me of a moment on the subway where there was this family, mother and father, and their 7-year-old daughter. And the woman was so upset. She says, "Oh, why, honey, why did we get onto the local train? I wanted to be on the express, and how did you make this happen?" And the girl looked out the window, this little 7-year-old, and we were blazing through a tunnel in the Middle Earth at 60 miles an hour. And then she looked back up at her mom and said, "But mommy, isn't this the express?" And it was one of those New York moments where you realize that, oh, this is an express train. It's local, but we're going fast and we're getting where we need to go. Just think about it. And I sometimes remember this Zen story that life is like a rowboat that you row out to the middle of a lake, and then the boat sinks. And that's the story. Okay, maybe it sounds a little depressing, but for me that's a wonderful wake-up call to the fact that there's only this one precious life that we have. And what are you going to do with it? Do you really want to dedicate this one precious life you have to working a lot, to working all the time, to your boss? Or do you want to find a new way to live an urban life that's saner, slower, and more fit for the future? The fact that we're in an environmental crisis is the exact reason why we should be slowing down. It's our fast pace, our frantic energy, our constant doing that's part of what's burning all the fossil fuels and contributing to the environmental crisis. With 7 billion people on the planet consuming more and more and more resources and doing more, it's making it worse. Being is as important as having and doing, then we'll actually be contributing to the health of the planet. Because if we can just become more like other creatures, just living simply, doing what we have to do, and not overdoing everything, it'll really go a long way to helping a lot of the problems in the world. Well, I was living in a 12 by 12 cabin off-grid for a season in North Carolina, and then I had to come back to the real world, to New York City and to my Queens townhouse. When I did, though, I couldn't hear No Name Creek. I couldn't find the leisure ethic. In fact, there were airplanes zooming overhead and just all the craziness of New York. And I was ready to leave. Well, not so fast, because my wife was offered an amazing job in the city, in New York, at the United Nations, and suddenly I had no choice but to find a way to make my 12 by 12 philosophy of leisure ethic, living more simply, living a minimalist life work in the belly of the go-go beast in New York City. And that's what we did. We moved from this big townhouse, we downsized to 1/5 of our belongings, moved into a tiny micro apartment, exploring all the incredible cultural creatives in New York in slow food, slow money, slow travel, all the different aspects of the slow movements. And so I came to write the book, sort of I was forced to. And I share the story of this year living sort of the leisure ethic in a New York minute. Well, I'm not sure I can give you a quick soundbite because I worked hard to stretch that New York minute into an hour. And I don't know if it's easy to digest it in such a quick form. get a copy of New Slow City and curl up and read it. Spend hours and hours lounging around, sinking into these stories. The act of reading is a powerful act of slowing down. I'm convinced that this experiment that we did and this book is transformative, and I hope that you'll be able to experience it. Was that a good soundbite?